Now, this week is Fire Prevention Week. Officials urge you to make sure that those smoke alarms are working properly. Valley News Team's Tiffany Ackerman tells us what to watch out for.
Nearly 280. That's the number of calls Ryan Erickson, the Fargo Fire Marshal, says the Fargo Fire Department responds to in 1 year. That's nearly one a day. Erickson says the leading cause of a fire structure in our area are cooking fires and smoking materials, like this apartment fire in 2021.
And both those are really preventable for smoking materials, just making sure we're putting those out and disposing them properly. And cooking, a lot of times what happens is things come up and so you get distracted and then the cooking's unattended and gets left unattended and forgotten and then leads to a fire.
Erickson also says to make sure you're paying attention, using a timer, and have your smoke alarms up to date.
Yeah, so first and foremost, with our smoke alarm message, what you want is have working smoke alarms in the proper locations, because that's going to give you an early indication that something's going wrong.
Governor Burgum's campaign is Smoke Alarms, Make Them Work for You, is educating people on the simple yet important steps to take to keeping yourself safe.
There's these devices in place that will help you to wake you up if something goes wrong. Because the thing is, sometimes people think of it as maybe a background. I don't have to worry about that, but even when you're sleeping, you could have smoke in your house and you're not going to sense it because your senses are down, since you're not awake.
Erickson says to remember to have your smoke alarms in every room, hallway, and on every level. In Fargo, Tiffany Ackerman, Valley News Live.
Officials add you should test your smoke alarm monthly, replace the batteries often, and replace the alarm completely after 10 years.